J.K. Rowling sparks outrage after mocking International Asexuality Day. J.K. Rowling has once again stirred up controversy on social media, this time by taking aim at International Asexuality Day. In a tweet that instantly triggered a firestorm of responses, the Harry Potter author sarcastically referred to the event as a fake oppression day, suggesting that its purpose is little more than giving people a platform to announce to complete strangers that they don't fancy a shag. Predictably, her remarks drew immediate backlash, especially from activists who had promoted the event as a celebration of visibility and inclusion for the asexual community. One of the co-creators of the day even accused Rowling of hijacking the conversation, claiming she had derailed what was supposed to be a moment of awareness and solidarity. But Rowling didn't back down. In classic fashion, she doubled down on her stance, pointing out what many have silently thought but have been too afraid to say publicly. The modern obsession with identity politics has turned every personal trait, lifestyle choice, and personality quirk into a marginalized category. And honestly, she's not entirely wrong. We now live in time where people are rewarded socially and sometimes even economically for finding new ways to feel oppressed. It's no longer enough to simply be human, with all the inherent struggles and triumphs that come with that. In today's hyper-politicized, social media-fueled culture, you have to belong to something. You have to identify with some sort of underrepresented group, even if that group was invented 5 minutes ago and revolves around a concept as basic as, I'm not interested in sex. Let's be clear here. No one is saying asexual people don't exist. Of course they do. There are people who don't experience sexual attraction, and that's completely fine. But do we really need an entire international day, complete with hashtags, press releases, corporate logos, and activist panels, to announce that some people just aren't in the mood? There's a difference between recognizing human variety and demanding special treatment for it. It's the same pattern we've seen across countless identity movements in recent years. What starts as a personal truth quickly becomes a political statement, and what begins as a call for acceptance morphs into a demand for visibility, validation, and a laundry list of imaginary oppressors. Rowling's sarcastic remark didn't just ruffle feathers. It exposed a growing cultural phenomenon that a lot of people are too scared to say out loud: the performative nature of so many modern causes. These days, it's not enough to quietly live your life and expect the basic dignity that every person deserves. That's old school. Now, your identity has to be center stage. It has to be a show. You need a label, a flag, a hashtag, a curated aesthetic, and a digital community to back it all up. You don't just exist anymore. You announce, declare, and demand validation. We've reached a point where personal quirks and lifestyle choices are treated like social movements. And if someone doesn't clap loud enough, or worse, if they poke fun at the absurdity of it all, they're immediately branded as a bigot, a hater, or in Rowling's case, the entire alphabet of online slurs: TRF, transphobe, misogynist, and now, apparently, a phobie. Because saying, I don't need to know you're not interested in sex, is now considered hate speech. But here's the thing. It was never really about asexuality. It's about something much bigger. It's about a culture that has become completely obsessed with identity, and not in a healthy, empowering way, but in a neurotic, clout-chasing, grievance-fueled way. We are living in a time where victimhood isn't just recognized, it's rewarded. The more marginalized boxes you can tick, the more points you rack up in the social status Olympics of the internet. And if you don't have any real oppression to speak of, no worries. Just invent a new one. Can't get a date? Welcome to the involuntarily celibate community. Feels socially awkward? That's not just shyness. You're probably neurodivergent. Don't like loud music at restaurants? Boom. You're sensory sensitive. Prefer to stay home on Friday nights? You're a misunderstood introvert who's been oppressed by extrovert culture. They're the label for everything, and every label comes with its own victim narrative, support group, TikTok trend, and merch. And it doesn't stop there. People now self-identify as narcissism survivors just because their ex was a jerk. You'll find entire Twitter threads about being emotional laborers for listening to a friend rant for 5 minutes. There are full-blown communities for people who are chronically misunderstood because they like niche video games or don't enjoy small talk. You'd think we're living through the emotional apocalypse, the way every mildly uncomfortable experience is framed as a form of trauma. Every mundane, common, universal human feeling, loneliness, boredom, insecurity, discomfort, is now recast as some kind of identity-based hardship. And the goal isn't healing or community. The goal is attention. The currency of modern internet culture is visibility. And the quickest way to gain visibility is to find a way to be oppressed, or at the very least, to feel like you are. In this system, victimhood equals power. It gives you moral authority. It gives you a built-in audience. It gives you protection because once you're labeled as part of a marginalized group, any criticism, even mild, good faith disagreement, can be dismissed as harmful. No need to debate. No need to engage. Just accuse the other person of erasing your identity and declare victory. This is what Rowling was calling out. Not the existence of asexual people, but the exhausting theater that identity politics has become. The pressure to perform your trauma online. The constant need to explain, defend, and showcase your difference as if it's a brand. The demand that everyone around you participate in this performance, or else risk being labeled hateful. We've created an environment where identity isn't something you simply have. It's something you constantly need to broadcast. And if you're not broadcasting, if you're not reposting the infographics and updating your bio with the latest acronym and participating in every awareness day, then you're seen as apathetic at best and oppressive at worst. This is especially true among younger generations raised on platforms like TikTok, Tumblr, and Twitter. Places where social capital is built on how unique your struggle is. If your life is too normal, you're invisible. If you're not queer, neurodivergent, traumatized, or chronically ill, you're not interesting enough to go viral. So naturally, people start twisting their lived experiences into narratives of oppression because that's how you get noticed. That's how you get followed. That's how you become valid. And it's dangerous, not just culturally, but psychologically. Because when victimhood becomes a performance, people stop looking for ways to grow and heal. Why would they? Healing means letting go of the very thing that gives them social power. It means walking away from the identity that gets them sympathy, community, and a sense of belonging. It's much easier to stay in the identity bubble and keep playing the role, especially when the algorithm rewards it. Meanwhile, people like Rowling, who refuse to play along, become targets. Not because they're wrong, but because they're right. They see through the facade, they call out the absurdity, and worst of all, they don't apologize for doing so. That's what makes them dangerous to the ideology that thrives on compliance and silence. So yes, Rowling's joke was harsh. Yes, it was sarcastic. But maybe that's exactly what we need more of, people willing to be blunt in a time of mass delusion. People who can recognize that not every personal quirk needs to be politicized, that not every lifestyle needs an awareness day, and that some things really can just be personal without becoming a public performance. At some point, we have to ask, what does it end? If every facet of human experience becomes a new identity group, and every identity group gets its own flag, its own pronouns, and its own oppression narrative, what do we actually stand for as a society? Are we building a culture of empathy or a culture of narcissism dressed up as justice? Rowling's tweet was just the match. The fire was already burning. And until we stop mistaking attention-seeking for activism and performance for principle, it's only going to get worse. And speaking of worse, platforms like Twitter or X reward outrage and identity performance. People are incentivized to share their trauma, real or imagined, in exchange for likes, retweets, and blue-check sympathy. And the second someone calls it out, especially if that someone is a rich, successful woman who refuses to bow to the outrage mobs, it's open season. It's also telling that Rowling's critics didn't address the core of her point. They didn't argue that asexuality is under constant threat, or that there's a global epidemic of anti-sexual hate crimes. Instead, they accused her of being mean, dismissive, and hijacking a conversation. That's because at the end of the day, there's no real oppression to point to. There's just a perceived slight against a symbolic day. And that's enough to light the torches. Look, not everything needs to be politicized. Not every identity needs a flag, a holiday, or a support group. You're allowed to be different without demanding the world stop and recognize your uniqueness as a form of struggle. You're allowed to live quietly without turning every personal experience into a civil rights campaign. That's not to say people shouldn't feel free to express who they are. But we need to be honest about where the line is between authentic self-expression and the commodification of victimhood. Because right now, that line is being trampled by influencers, activists, and opportunists who see identity politics as a golden ticket to social clout. J.K. Rowling, for all her faults, isn't afraid to call it out. And that's what really bothers her critics. It's not just that she said something controversial. It's that she said something that hit a little too close to the truth. She challenged the narrative that identity equals oppression, and that's a sin in today's progressive dogma. So where does this leave us? With yet another Twitter pile-on, another round of performative outrage, and another reminder that the culture war is still alive and well, especially when someone dares to question the ever-expanding list of things we're not allowed to joke about. And as for International Asexuality Day, it'll come and go like so many other awareness days. There will be hashtags, think pieces, and heartfelt testimonials. But the real question is, when did being left alone become a political identity? And more importantly, how long before we run out of new days to feel uniquely oppressed? But then again, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more content.